With the date for Queen Dizzy and the Season 4 patch coming at the end of this month, October, I decided to make one last tier list for real for Season 3. This patch is a little bit unusual. It's a pretty short patch. The last patch for Season 2 we played on for quite a while, from December until August. December 2022 until August 2023. Where this patch, by the time Dizzy comes out, it will be maybe like a week over 3 months that we're on this patch. And they didn't really make a lot of changes to the game. Outside of buffing some generally agreed upon low tiers, characters like Testament, Johnny, Elfelt, and Potemkin. Even though some people say that they forgot one character or two, I do think the game has changed a good amount despite how little they actually changed it. Now for this tier list, unlike my usual more detailed breakdowns, I'm going to be really focusing on what changed from the previous patch to this one, because the characters are pretty similar to last patch. But before we do this, I want to look at the breakdown of the tier list itself. For a while now, I stopped using letters for tier lists, and instead I mark how far or how well I think a character can do at large events. I think the naming is pretty straightforward. So wins, I mean, these are the characters that I think should win the most things, especially at like international majors. Good chance to win characters are also have like a high chance of winning. They just either have like some small flaws or some like small matchup problem that they might have to deal with on their way there. Top 8 contenders can definitely make deep runs at major events and can definitely win smaller stuff pretty reliably. A.B.A is a little weird. We'll get to her later. Then there's the bracket ruiner. So these characters are good in concept, but they have problems that can be abused by either bad matchups or they have problems with the system or something. But despite their flaws, if you're not prepared for them, they will definitely give you a hard time. And then the last group is the characters that are power crept, where these are characters I think just haven't gotten too much love from the developers. And to start, I think we'll begin with Zato. So Zato has pretty much been in this position for the entirety of Season 3, and Season 3 has been going on for more than a year now. That being said, the buffs he got this time are pretty helpful. The Pierce buff he got made it so that he can confirm air hits and counter hits with Pierce much more consistently. Where before the players would joke and say that it was kind of like RNG. The buff to his gauge was also pretty big. When you use a system mechanic to kill Eddie, it remembers how much health Eddie had and then recovers from there. Previously, the gauge would empty completely and then he'd have to stall or play until he got Eddie back. And from Season 2 to Season 3, they nerfed the recovery of Eddie from 3.5 seconds to 7 seconds. Finally, the buff to Eddie and his move speed is just a good quality of life, and it enables new setups. That being said, he still maintains the same system flaws and plenty of nerfs, like the nerfs to his jabs. Now for Potemkin, I made a video about her and my problems with her when this patch dropped. If you want a very in-depth overview of why I don't think she's good right now, then you should watch that video. But if you want a long story short, essentially, people agreed that she was low tier last patch, even though I wasn't completely sold on it. But despite that, she got nerfed by the system mechanics. Wall break knockdown was huge for her and basically one of the main things that gave me hope for the character in 3.5. As the character is not that fast and a lot of her tools that are strong are like mid-range or retreating tools and not things that fly at you from more than half screen or full screen. While she still has meter options with parry, the parry RC nerf also felt like just an unnecessary stray to keep her in line with other characters, and she just keeps receiving system nerfs and stray nerfs from other characters getting changed, while they don't really give her anything to compensate. Unlike Zato though, she's not really weak at a system level. She has one of the best throwers in the game. She's very good at using meter, has pretty good normals and mid-screen control, and I think she's a pretty easy character to fix. So Milia is another character I think is very heavily affected by the wall break, by wall assault not knocking down after a wall break. And the big thing for her is that she doesn't build meter quickly, so the wall assault knockdown helped her fix that problem. Not having the guaranteed control definitely hurts, and she's not really a character known for neutral skips. She certainly is a fast character, but a lot of her scariest things involve her being relatively close to the opponent. Elba was actually a little bit difficult for me to place because I haven't played against her a ton this patch, but she didn't feel very different to me. I actually thought this character would be affected by Wild Assault not knocking down after wall break a lot because she's very good and positive. Since they're like building meter by resetting sometimes with the Rekka, It doesn't seem to be a huge deal. Like many characters, she's happy that you can't roam and cancel DPs, especially considering that her offense has plenty of gaps. I think there's probably more there with this character though. I felt like I had a good amount of experience against her in 3.5, but I haven't really played against her very much in this patch, and we're about to move to a new patch, so I think Bedman's changes actually help him out quite a bit. Between the JS vacuum helping with conversions, and his 2H connecting easier after far slash, which Baiken wishes she had very badly, on top of new utility with his JD, I think he actually got a lot from this patch, and it seems like Bedman players enjoy playing him far more. On top of that, even though White Water Assault is nerfed, I do think he uses it well in combination with arrows. I probably did that wrong, but whatever. That being said, it feels like the main thing is that all the characters that were buffed were low tiers like him, and so they feel like, I don't know, he's kind of like the same as them, even though I definitely feel like he's better. And he still has the same weaknesses like being big and having a slow jump and having low HP for a big body character. Axel feels kind of weird for me. He feels like win more and do more of the same thing while still having the same weaknesses. So if you lost Axel before, you're probably feeling it even worse now. The speed buff to his tornado is definitely noticeable. And Air Snail being hard knockdown is pretty big for him, because he's able to convert ID back JS into a hard knockdown, which he cannot do before without meter. The 2B buff is subtle, but it really matters for matches where he's using this move a lot, which is generally slow characters. So I feel like it just made him do what he does slightly better, but if you played a fast character or something that was good against Axel already, then you might not really feel the changes against him. Testament also feels like another do the same thing more, but do it slightly easier type character. But I do think the changes make it so that people don't accidentally beat the character, and if you played Testament and felt that way about the character before, I can definitely relate, because I have felt that about previous characters I've played, and how people talk about them. Wink wink Camellia. Essentially, if your character is not good at fighting this full screen fireball now, you're gonna feel it a lot more, I think. And they have a bunch of new combos and setups which are really nice. The 2S and 2H conversions help out a lot with this. I also think is technically in the same place. I think the biggest things for him is that he doesn't really mind the changes to Wild Assault, because his neutral is pretty strong, especially with items on the screen. So A.B.A is in a very unique spot in this game right now. Now, in my opinion, if you use her as a secondary character, she's probably up there with Sol and Kai as a great support character. I made a video about me playing her in tournaments specifically as a counter pick and how successful it's been for me. Even though it mostly comes up early in brackets, it helps a ton. And if you have a losing matchup into A.B.A, it just feels so doomed, because thanks to having fast buttons into hard knockdown that gives her resource, if you have to like approach her and have like interactive offense defense with her, when you're wrong, you feel it heavily. And her conversion ability is amazing in jealousy range, along with her with punish game. As a solo main, it can be hard for A.B.A to clear certain zoners. She's slow in normal mode, and in the case that the zoner can be advantageous from neutral, it makes both playing neutral in normal mode and the burst situation difficult. The burst situation in particular, if you don't have tension gauge, will feel like almost you're gambling the whole round on this one situation, and it feels like it's in their favor. So I kind of put her here kind of as a in-between of, oh, if you solo main her and if you counter pick with her. She is pretty much unbothered by the Wild Assault change, because she breaks the wall with jealousy and gaining jealousy especially, and now she's going to passively gain meter and do more damage and have better HP. And like many characters, she won't really care about DPRC. She didn't care about it before, since you couldn't RC DPs against Danzai anyway, but this just means that the reward for evading DPs is even higher than before. So I was considering grouping Potemkin with A.B.A, but I don't really think Potemkin is like a counter pick character, nor would I say he has the same utility as A.B.A in the game in general. So the biggest thing about this version of Potemkin is that he really forces people to move correctly against him, because he has additional tools now that hard knockdown that has enough advantage to lead to a favorable situation. In addition to Hammerfall leading to a hard knockdown as well. I think the buff to his JD is certainly nice as well, but probably a matchup specific tool. And low-key, I think Faust is probably as good as Potemkin. I also think the Wild Assault nerf doesn't hurt him too much. His Wild Assault was very good when it was plus, of course, because he could strike throw off it, but his options afterwards are pretty good. Finally, the character is just a menace with meter, and right now, people have been talking about how high HP characters get meter for free and stuff again. We had this discussion in Season 2, it still applies now, and he has some fun ways of using this in this patch. Could he do this last patch? Sure. Would they? Not really. It was plus before. And he himself is not getting snowballed because people aren't breaking the wall of Wild Assault anymore. So he can live longer. So Eno is up with Elf for me of I wish I had more time on this patch. People actually really debate where this character is. Eno players are convinced she's really bad. I think she's pretty decent, but I think it's a character where, for example, she could go up or down during this patch. Honestly, I'm leaning towards down. She definitely liked the snowballing effect of Wild Assault knockdown, but DBRC being out of the game benefits her. I also think she maintains a lot of her previous strengths, like being slippery, forcing people to make choices without being able to see, and being really strong when the opponent bursts you. So I don't know, and this is one of those we're not gonna know because because in a couple weeks they're gonna update the game. So Bridget feels like kind of a mixed bag for me right now. So I feel like she definitely likes weaker DPs, but she lost her DP 50-50 because she had a high-low of her DP because her DP is multiple hits and goes high enough. Also, she doesn't do a ton of damage, so she is the one giving people meter in order to make big comebacks and do huge combos to her. And this type of character is very popular right now. Besides that, I feel like she's somewhat unchanged from the previous patch. I don't think she minds the Wild Assault change too much. So Chip, I basically have him in the same position. Not having to worry about DPs definitely helps him as his pressure is pretty interactable, but he also had a 50-50 of his DPRC before, which he definitely misses. In 3.0, he was one of the best users of Red Wild Assault in the game, and the effectiveness of this has definitely gone down every patch, including this one. This was pretty important to him because he gets a damage and defense buff in positive, and remember, he is one of the lowest HP characters in the game. That being said though, I think Chip is just fundamentally a good character. They had to go really out of their way to dumpster him, and he just got a new move that we don't know what's gonna happen with it. It looks kind of nutty, so we'll see. So in Jacko's case, I moved her slightly lower. I do think that she liked Wild Assault knockdown and being able to snowball and gain a bunch of meter and just chip people to death or things like that. Outside of this, I think she's pretty similar, honestly. So for Asuka, I have him in the same position. I don't think he really cares about the Wild Assault change, and he definitely likes the DP change, as there are small gaps in his pressure that if you have a lot of experience against him, you can fight back with meterless reversals, or metered reversals to be honest, but he had to worry about it more from meterless reversal characters besides Baiken, as these are all projectiles. So now the reward of hitting him with reversal is lower. To be honest, the type of offense that Asuka and other kind of zoning plus from neutral characters do was one of the main reasons I wanted DPRC to stay in the game in the first place, but that's besides the point. Because then we have Sin, so I definitely think he's down from before. I think Sin feels the patches changes very hard in that when he does DP now, he can't do the follow-up anymore or RC anymore. So his DP finally, after all this time, is normal. So I mean, this is like some monkey paw curling type thing for me. But I think the Wild Assault nerf also affected him too because he got resource from neutral. But at the same time, even though he was good at snowballing, I think he's good enough in neutral to just do something like Elk Hunt to kind of just slide on back in and B+ and do what he has to do. But his defense being weaker is a huge deal for sure. So Giovanna, I moved her up from last time. I think Giovanna's stocks are definitely up right now. And this is probably the best she's been for a while. And specifically it's because now with DPRC being removed, the only real serious defensive things she worries about in general are 4-frame and 3-frame normals that are not that common. And some of these can't even be converted really, along with low profile 2Ks. On top of that, I don't think she really minds going back to neutral either. So Anji is the same to me. He definitely benefits from DPs being nerfed like Giovanna does, but I do think he liked the snowballing kind of thing from Wild Assault knockdown. But I also think going back to neutral is good for him too because he's going to be building meter and he has the threat of spin and dash block and all those things. He just is somewhat not super stable for tournaments despite me thinking he's pretty strong. I had this feeling about some other characters. I'll mention one that might sound surprising a little bit later. But Anji, I think they would have to do something really crazy for him to be a straight up top tier character in this game. I also have Ram in the same position. Similarly to Anji, I think she does like the DP nerf because of the way she does pressure, especially in the corner. But I definitely think she's felt the pain of Wild Assault nerfs in every patch in Season 3, as like Chip, I thought she was one of the best users of Red Wild Assault. when the patch launched. So Leo's the last DP 50/50 character. They lost it, so you can only get it off HDP now. And really, the main reason I have him down compared to before is that for a long time, I felt like Leo's greatest strength was reversing defensive positions in a meaningful way. So not being able to do DPRC into a 50/50, into knockdown, into mix-up, or a wall break is a huge deal for him. As far as resetting into neutral, I think he doesn't care too much. It might sound surprising, but I think Kai is pretty much the same. And out of the characters whose DPs got nerfed, I think his is probably the least affected, mostly because people had so many ways of covering his DP without needing to safe jump. Resetting in neutral is pretty good for him too. It's not like he had a lot of special mix-ups after wall break or anything like that, and he's good at all ranges, so he's going to be building meter very quickly. The last character in his group is Soul. I think like Leo, he really benefited from DPRC and being able to do high damage combos after reversing defensive situations and the threat of using meter into these type of things. And he snowballed hard with Wild Assault 2 and Wild Assault Knockdown. His neutral skips are pretty good, Bandit Revolver being the main one, but I don't think they're like top class. I think he is the same as Anji in that he is like not that stable, you know, and like the defense thing in particular really helped him out last patch, but I still think he's very strong. So Slayer, I low-key think is like Super Potemkin, like he always gets beater to explode you. He benefits a lot from Wild Assault not knocking down because he has great neutral skips, like good old Mappa Hunch, and his reward for baiting a DP and not having to worry about RC anymore is huge. Pretty much, I just think this character got more developed since July is basically the main thing outside the system mechanics. Then we have Johnny. Johnny's stocks are massively up compared to before. He has a ton of HP, good at building meter and using meter. The dash up makes both his offense and neutral much harder to deal with. He has better reward off misfire counter hits, guaranteed ways to set up mix-ups, really good strike throw because everything guard crushes. Even if DPs weren't nerfed, he wouldn't care that much. And he doesn't really mind Wild Assault Knockdown being removed, even though he did benefit from it. For Happy Chaos, you might have seen that I wrote some poetry about this character when I read the patch notes. He benefits greatly from this patch with Wild Assault not knocking down and DPs not being able to be roaming cancelled, meaning he can run offense safely. He's not punished as hard for getting hit by a reversal. And he's still able to curse you and break the wall, so he's able to keep a big advantage after breaking the wall still. On top of all the many things we've talked about Happy Chaos over and over again. Then there's Mei. So I've been playing this character since Evo. I don't really know if there's a top 1 Mei timeline in this patch. I definitely think she's top 3. She's certainly strong, but pretty much unchanged. She, similarly to Slayer, likes DPRC being nerfed. My thoughts on this character would actually take a while to explain, and I don't know if it's going to change because we don't know what's really going to happen to the cast really in a couple weeks. But if someone told me that they thought this was the best version of A.B.A in Season 3, I would almost definitely give it to them right now. Essentially, though, she's in the same position as I had her as the previous patch. And finally, Nago. This character is just eternal, in my opinion. The white Wild Assault nerf doesn't affect him very much. He's used to being slightly minus in these type of positions, and he's very good at it already. It's just that his Wild Assault is now, like, broken. And that's pretty much it. This is definitely, again, a weird tier list for me because a lot of the points I made about Season 3.5 carry over to this patch, so I was like, I shouldn't really just repeat myself over the course of another 3 hours and redo the same thing, but characters did move up and down some. Probably the biggest thing for this patch is that the characters that they brought out their full potential, a bunch of them are still technically in the same position. They just kind of raised the floor of the game rather than like used them to change the game, if that made sense. The most buffed character was definitely Johnny, I think. Johnny's kind of like a menace right now. I don't think he would really move down over the course of this patch. We played it for like 6 months or slightly more. I think people just keep on developing more and more things and get everything tighter. You know, what tends to happen with this type of character, especially when they're popular. The mysteries for me, probably the number 1 is Elfelt, and then number 2 is Eno. And last is the May top 1. And again, unfortunately, we're not gonna know because the next patch is supposed to be a major update, and every time they say the game's getting a major update, they are quite serious and the game gets a ton of changes. I know it's shorter than usual and like kind of less thorough-ish, but let me know what you think. As usual, if you have any questions or comments, definitely feel free to leave them in the comment section below. I'll try to clarify a lot of stuff because I was trying to be kind of curt with this tier list, but I did want to send off season 3 with something like some record of like what happened after the log season 3.5 patch. If you want Guilty Gear coaching, by the way, I do coach over on Metafy at metafy.gg/@LordKnight. I stream pretty much every day during the weekdays on twitch.tv/LordKnight. That's where we also do things like the funniest tweets and scrub quote confessions and all that stuff. So if you're interested in that, definitely come through. Like and subscribe if you guys feel like it, and I'll see y'all next time. Peace out.